this is a session about enterprise Android and specifically about the things that Motorola is doing to add features to Android to make it better suited for enterprise use. And my name is Rick Rogers. I'm the product manager for a program at Motorola called MX. And MX is an ongoing program that is designed to add features to Android, features that, because of our experience of working with enterprise customers, we know that enterprise operating systems need, and for various reasons aren't there in Android. Android, of course, is a great operating system and designed to be a consumer operating system. Google's spent a lot of money to create the code and make it available to all of us, which is great. But they're focused on the devices that best suit their business model, which are consumer devices, which are used generally by a single user, managed by that user. So the user sort of has complete control over what's going on the device. And as we'll see as we go through the presentation, some of those features are not that suitable for use in the enterprise. So we're working to adapt Android so it fits better with the enterprise. And as I said, I'm the product manager for this MX program, but I should also point out too that you shouldn't get the impression that we're now focused on Android or something to the exclusion of Microsoft. Microsoft is still a very strong partner with Motorola. And in fact, I was in meetings this morning with them about the future directions that we're taking with them. So you should see a balance of products coming in the future from Motorola, some based on Android, some based on Microsoft products. And as I say, we're still strong partners. And the other thing I should point out, I guess, the other caveat that I would offer to this presentation, you've heard a lot about RHOElements and RHOMobile during this session, and RHOMobile is our vision for the way applications will be done in the future. That cross-platform applications make sense, especially for the enterprise, and that building applications using HTML5 and RHOMobile makes a lot of sense. I'll be talking about Dalvik-based applications, so closer to being native applications on Android, but the eventual goal, vision, is that we move toward HTML5. So we'll talk about some of the specifics about the things that we're adding to Android to make it more enterprise appropriate. We'll talk a bit about GMS apps, Google Mobile Services, if you're not familiar with what that is, and how those relate to our products and what you as ISVs might care about there. Talk a very little bit really about future directions for MX, so give you a general vision for the way things are headed in the things that we want to add in the future. And then do a brief coding example talking about one of the specific features that we've added, namely the ability to connect to a barcode reader, and show you how easy it is to implement barcode reading, for example, using that interconnect in your applications. So any questions about what we're going to talk about or additions that you'd like to see me improvise? So MX, as I said, is our program to enhance Android, and it's an ongoing program. We started it, I started with Motorola 8 months ago, and MX was a program that had started before that. So started for the introduction of the ET1 at the end of last year. And it's a program where we've just begun to implement the features that we'd like to see in Android. We literally have a 150-page document of features, things that we believe enterprises need that aren't in Android today at least, and things that we'd like to add over time. It will obviously take us a long time to be able to add all those features, and features are added continuously as we talk to customers and they tell us about other things that they would like to see added. So it's an ongoing program that with no end in sight. It was formerly called Mesa. If any of you have heard of a program called Mesa at Motorola, we changed the name to MX. It's not something that we sell separately. So Emacs, so if you will, the customers for me as a product manager are my internal product development teams. So we deliver these extensions to the product development teams who are developing Android-based products. They integrate them into their product build, test them, they give them back to us to test again, and then they come out with the product. So in the case of the ET1, the first set of features that were created to add on to Android are integrated into the ET1 product. There's been one release since the introduction of the ET1, and there will be a series of releases that integrate more and more features as time goes on. Presumably your ISVs here at the App Forum, so you might be interested in, is there an SDK associated with Emacs? We're trying to avoid having an SDK so far. So far, so good. Most of the features, as you'll see, that we're adding to Android are not things that ISVs have to interface with through an API. So multi-user, for example, from the application's point of view, there's some user using the application, but adding the multi-user feature to Android so that different users can authenticate on the device and have their own data space, that kind of thing, are things that happen external to the application, so you don't have to worry about them. For the few things that do require some kind of an interface, and barcode reading is one of those. Hi, Alan.
You didn't look at your calendar, apparently.
Alan never looks at my calendar. You have to know Alan. For the few things that do require interfaces like barcode reading, we have created an intent, so an Android intent that can be used to interface to that. And we'll show you in the code example how that works. The barcode interface is the only intent documented so far that's available to you as ISVs, and it's documented in that guide called the Integrator's Guide. If you Google ET1 Integrator Guide, it'll give you a URL, a pointer to that. So I said we were adding enterprise features, so what are those enterprise features? What makes an enterprise device different from a consumer device? And I'll build some on this slide, and then there are more on the next slide that we'll talk about. So this is in general, not specific to Emacs or to Android for that matter, but they are features that are included in that 150-page list of things that we'd like to see in Android-based enterprise devices. Battery management, clearly that's a big issue for mobile devices and for enterprise devices in particular. So consumer devices, consumers don't mind too much if they have to recharge their phone overnight, right? They're sleeping anyway. They can, as long as they remember to plug in the phone and recharge it, it's not a big deal. In the enterprise, it is a big deal because devices are often used over multiple shifts. If a device battery loses charge in the middle of a shift, there should be a way to swap the battery without losing the context of the work that's being done with the device. Those kinds of issues that are different between enterprise and consumer. So we tend to offer larger batteries, the ability to swap batteries and maintain context, things like that. Wireless connectivity, again, for a consumer, wireless connectivity is fine if it connects with their home wireless LAN and when they're in Starbucks or whatever, connects with that wireless LAN. They're satisfied with that and it meets their need. But the enterprise has, in general, much more stringent requirements around wireless connectivity, including wireless LAN extensions like CCX for Cisco connectivity, some Motorola extensions that we've added, additional EAP types, the ability to connect to 5 gigahertz, which some consumer devices support, but in general, where they do support it, they support it poorly. And you may or may not be aware that for many enterprises, 5 gigahertz is a way for them to isolate their enterprise traffic from wireless LAN that they might want to make available to customers or other interfering sources of traffic in that band, in that 2.4 gigahertz band. Diversity switched antennas and things like that again, make the wireless connectivity in the enterprise world more robust and are less important in the consumer world, tend to get sacrificed in the name of sleek design and things like that. So extra antennas tend to get thrown out of the design because they work against the sleekness of the design or whatever that people are looking for in the consumer world. Form factor stability and enterprise lifecycle. Trying to remember what were the three things that were mentioned in the keynote yesterday. Security, manageability, I think, and lifecycle were the three big differentiators that were pointed out there. And lifecycle certainly is. Consumer devices, again, consumer OEMs tell us that they typically build a device for 6 to 9 months, and then they don't build it anymore. So they sell off whatever's left after they've built that many, but it's a fairly short manufacturing run when compared to the kinds of offerings that we have in the enterprise world and that enterprise customers need. Enterprise customers typically need years of support for the devices that they buy from us. They also need a better controlled maintenance and update path to the software on the device, right? So again, consumer devices, typically the carrier will push a new update to a device whenever it's convenient for the carrier, and the user has the option of accepting it now or later, but you know, it keeps bugging you till you do. For enterprises, a software update can be a huge expense, actually, not only for the expense of actually updating the devices, but the expense of proving their applications still work with that updated version of the software, things like that. So enterprises need a more controlled ability to update devices, still get security patches and maintenance updates as required, but to have more control over how those are delivered and when they're delivered to specific devices. Consumer devices also are obviously designed to appeal to consumers. So they have features that consumers like high fidelity sound and high resolution displays, which in most cases don't have a need, a real use case for enterprise use, and in some cases are a detriment to enterprise use because they sacrifice battery life for more pixels or higher fidelity sound. Again, an enterprise device, where an enterprise device would not include those features, consumer devices do because they're more appealing for consumer kinds of usage models. Also different touch and display technologies. I talked about resolution of the display, but for the touch screen itself as well. Often in the enterprise usage model, the user has gloves on, so they can't use the capacitive display because the gloves won't allow it to work. Or they're using it outdoors in the rain, and capacitive displays don't work that well in the rain. So, you know, enterprise devices, some enterprise devices need to have resistive touch screens in order to accommodate those usage models. And of course, neither Google nor Apple or any of the consumer device manufacturers offer a roadmap that an enterprise could depend on for what kind of devices will be available in the near future. Pretty much from Google or Apple, you find out about it when they announce it, and you know, the devices are available immediately thereafter. So our customers require more predictability in terms of what device features are going to be available in the future and what form factors those devices will have. And finally, the ability to customize. When those OEMs are making consumer devices over 6 to 9 months, they're making tens of millions of devices, and there's no business model there for making customizations to those devices in smaller quantities. It's just, it doesn't fit their manufacturing process and their whole way of doing business. But our enterprise customers often do need customizations to the device. So that's one of the things we've integrated into our business model, the ability to do that. Security was one of the other big three features that were highlighted in the keynote. And you know, clearly there are requirements in the enterprise space, sometimes legal requirements, particularly around credit card information in the retail world, or HIPAA capability in the healthcare world, and as well as mandated requirements like FIPS for government users of devices, for securing information and the ability to react to situations, say if the device is rooted or something like that, so that data can be protected absolutely on the device. Not so important for the consumer, it's important to have your contact information and your email protected, but it's not a legal requirement. Nobody's going to sue you if somebody gets a hold of your contact information. Improve productivity through features like multi-user support, the ability for several people to use a single device, to use it over a series of shifts perhaps. And features like rapid application access, where for applications that don't require a high level of security, price check is a typical example. You go to Walmart, right? You can check the price on an item by holding it up to a kiosk barcode scanner. It's important to be able to invoke applications outside of a login, so you don't have to log in to use that price check scanner at Walmart. And there are a whole class of applications where that makes sense. And it improves productivity by not having, in an enterprise, again, the user might have a 12-character password with, a complex password, and that takes a while to enter on a mobile device on the virtual keyboard. So it's important to have that kind of capability to improve productivity. Enterprise feature integration. So I said we're going to show the demo code is about barcode scanning, and it's important to have these features integrated or integrable into the device. So the ET1 with Snap-on peripherals and things like that integrate onto the device, as opposed to having a separate thing like a sled with a barcode reader and extended battery. Development support and multiple runtimes. Development support, clearly for the features that we're adding, there needs to be a robust development support that developers like yourselves can take advantage of the features that are there. Multiple runtimes, the ability to, particularly to port legacy applications. Many of our customers have applications that they've built for other runtime environments, so it's important to enable the transition of those to newer runtimes as they become available. Durability and environmental is probably what people think of first when they think of our devices. They think of ruggedized devices that you could drop on the concrete or take into a freezer or out into a desert and not have to worry about the environmental effects. Consumer devices obviously are not made for that. Someone was telling me today that the upper temperature limit on an iPhone is 95 degrees and Fahrenheit. And the temperature in Dallas last year, I guess, exceeded that for 101 days. So I don't know how many iPhone failures they had as a result, but clearly extended temperature and durability are key features for enterprise use. Device management, not only the normal device management that is available on consumer devices, but more, I almost said invasive, but more comprehensive device management, because enterprise devices are owned by the enterprise. They aren't owned by the user of the device. So the enterprise needs to have the capability to tightly manage that device, lock down what they need to lock down on the device, and own it. Voice and audio support. Many of our customers need to combine the ability to compute with a mobile computing device with the ability to connect by voice over wireless LAN to other users using devices. So they need to have that local capability to do voice and not have to go out to the WAN. So any questions about consumer versus enterprise? I said we had that 150-page document, and what we've done with it is take the features that are identified in that document and break them down into these 11 different categories. So just briefly to walk through what those categories are, to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we're looking at incorporating into Android. MDMs, So that's that device management aspect of being able to manage the device comprehensively. And that's not only for Motorola's own MDM solution, MSP, but also for third-party MDMs. Many of our customers have standardized on an MDM that's not MSP, that they use across all their mobile devices, and they don't want to introduce another MDM to manage Motorola devices. So we're working with those third-party MDM providers so that they can manage our Android devices as well. Security management, we talked about the kinds of security features that we see being added, that need to be added into consumer operating system like Android to make it suitable for the enterprise. So those all fit in there. Application management is all about controlling what applications can run on the device. And that can be it's currently through a whitelist. And we'll talk about the specific features that are implemented so far, but essentially an administrator or an MDM can establish a whitelist of applications for a user group, and then members of that user group can only install and run applications that are listed on that whitelist. There are other approaches, blacklisting, gray listing, things like that, but that's all part of it. And then also included in there is the ability to lock the device down into what's typically referred to as kiosk mode, where the device can only run one application or a few applications from a restricted home screen, so that you can restrict users so that they don't get at the wireless LAN settings, for example, and if they were to take the device, it would be useless because it can't connect to any SSID other than the one that's already connected to. Expense management, to begin with at least, is primarily oriented around telecom expense management. So for wide area network devices based on Android, some of our customers want devices that have multiple SIM capability so that they can choose between carriers that are available. And the plans, the contracts that they have with those carriers can change the price that they pay for wireless connectivity based on time of day, day of week, all kinds of different policies. So they want to be able to set policies that say, on 7 o'clock on Thursdays, pick this SIM, use that wide area connection, those kinds of things. Performance management is mostly around taking advantage of the performance capabilities that can either be accelerated via the hardware through the graphics accelerator or the crypto accelerator or whatever accelerators are available, or through optimized software libraries. And Motorola has a lot of that intellectual property, both hardware and software acceleration capability through our legacy businesses and some of the other businesses besides enterprise that we're involved in. Wireless management, I talked before about the need to add particularly wireless LAN capabilities that aren't present in consumer devices that are needed in the enterprise world, primarily around security and the ability to solidly connect to the wireless LAN and use it for, he's persistent, isn't he? Is that going to go in the video? I have to tell Alan that he's on the video. User interface, user experience management is around improving the user experience in using the device. So, and that relates to some of those things, although it's also related to application management. So I talked about the ability to use applications without having to log into the device and those kinds of things, all oriented really around improving the productivity of the user in the enterprise usage models. Battery power management, again, obviously important for the reasons that we talked about earlier. And a number of things, again, there that we can do, things that we have learned from the long enterprise experience that Motorola has based on other operating systems. Supplemental hosted services, so think of the cloud, things that are done to benefit the user of a mobile device, but are done off the device. So they're done in the cloud or on the server, services that augment what the mobile device can do without draining the battery on the device, except for the communication involved, of course. Development support tools to support all of this so that people can actually use it and make use of it, and utilities and applications, which is a long and growing list of utilities and applications that customers are asking for that they don't see native in Android, but they're used to in their traditional legacy in our traditional products, our enterprise products from previous times. So what have we done so far, and what are we planning for the near future, and how does all that fit together? So we have added a multi-user framework to Android. With the first release of ET1, that was there. And with the first release, what that did was authenticate multiple users using a local username password database, encrypted obviously, but present locally on the mobile device. And you'll see later that we've extended that to remote authentication, and we'll be extending it further. It does allow for group profiles. I mentioned earlier that the whitelists are user group based, and so this is the way that you can assign users to user groups and manage those user groups as a group without having to manage individual users. I talked about whitelists before. I mentioned blacklists and gray lists as things that we've identified for the future. Whitelist is you can run this application if it's listed. A blacklist is you cannot run this application if it's listed. The problem with blacklists is you can never be sure that you've got every application that you want to outlaw on the blacklist. With a whitelist, you don't have that problem. You're just listing the ones that you can absolutely run. A gray list is, as you might expect, something in between, where a third-party rating agency rates applications, gives them a number by how usable, non-dangerous they are, if you will. Say 1 to 10. And then through the MDM or an administrator can set a value and say, okay, you can't install or run any application that's not at least a 6 on that list. So it gives some mid-ground flexibility to whitelisting and blacklisting. Right now we have whitelisting by user group. Secure storage, with the again with the launch of ET1, we added volume file encryption to Android so that you can create an encrypted file volume in the flash and make use of that, store the key securely and all of that kind of stuff. That's the next one. And then, as you probably know, with Ice Cream Sandwich, Android has added device encryption. So we'll be carrying on both of those. Some customers want the full SD card, for example, encrypted. Other customers just want to be able to encrypt separate file systems, separate partitions, if you will, and use separate keys for those for whatever reason. So we'll have both of those moving forward. Unassisted device management, again, in the consumer world, the user is king. You always ask the consumer or the user if you want to install something on the device, or if you want to make a settings change or those kinds of things. In the enterprise world, the user shouldn't have control. So we implemented things like unassisted device management, where an MDM can download and install an application without the user even knowing that they did it. So the user isn't presented with a normal, do you approve these permissions or those kind of things. It just gets installed. Integrated barcode scanning, again, we'll show more of that as we get into the demo app. So those are the kind of things we added to begin with. Oops. I'm missing a slide. Well, let me talk about the kind of things that should have been on the next slide. And were yesterday for some reason. The things that we're moving toward in the future. So I said we added remote authentication. That's actually out in the latest release that was out in the ET1 beginning of April. And that's authentication through LDAP, so the normal directory services that enterprises use. Again, it will do remote authentication so that you can have a single password that covers the whole enterprise. You only have to change it once, and it includes the mobile device. In addition to that, in a future release, we'll be coming out with separation of user data spaces. So right now, although multiple people can log in and be authenticated on the device, they share the same data space once they're logged in. So any data that one of them writes is visible to the next person who's authenticated on that device. With this new release that will be coming out, we are incorporating separation of user data spaces so that they each have their own data space and can't see each other's data.
And that is integrated with LDAP, Active Directory or something like that?
Actually, the only way we use LDAP is for authentication. Okay, so.
But the user management is use the Active Directory credentials?
Yes, it does, right. It does not use the user groups that are identified in Active Directory. Okay.
So how can
Those,
you control the groups or
so you can control, yeah,
locally?
locally. So those have to be controlled locally. They can be controlled, configured via the MDM. So in that sense, it's not local, but the actual group information is on the device.
And how can you deploy that group information between devices? There is some kind
The
of...
MDM can, yes. So it has to go back up to the MDM, yeah.
Okay.
There are utilities, so you could do it locally, but you wouldn't want to do it that way unless you had just a few devices. You'd want to do it through the MDM.
Okay, but there is a way to repeat that configuration over
Via the MDM, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So, so some of the other directions that we're taking in the near future. Obviously, we're following along with the evolution of Android. So as Android moves to ice cream sandwich, to jelly bean, key lime pie, whatever comes next, we are following that evolution in a controlled way. As I said before, for enterprises, it's not always good to be on the leading edge of the technology that's coming out. It's better to control the pace of technology. And so that's what we're doing. Yeah?
What's the kind of time difference in terms of the release cycles, like Android 4, MX,
Yeah.
like a 2 months or games?
So it's longer than 2 months. So we have a maintenance policy, and I didn't include a slide on the maintenance policy, but essentially what we want to do is to move to the latest release of Android on the order of 9 months after the open source it's made available to open source. Okay. And with Ice Cream Sandwich, it's going to be a little longer than that, but that's sort of the intent, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, to give the release an opportunity to be vetted, if you will, for the early maintenance and security updates to get applied, so that we're not going out with something that's vulnerable to the enterprise space. And it's also, as I said before, to throttle the pace of development.
Is there a big beta program or something, say, customer can go themselves upgrade with, is it going to break things? I mean, we take MX and we also go and upgrade the Android version. Can this seem like going to break, or is it something customer beta programs?
So is there a beta program? There's a beta program, there's generally a beta program for the launch of the device, but not for the updates, okay? So the updates come out, and generally the way enterprises deploy those updates, because again, it's controlled, it's not, at our whim, it's at the enterprise's judgment for when the updates are applied. So generally what enterprises do is their own beta program, right? They take the update, they try it out with the IT department before they deploy it to everyone who has the device. Okay. Okay, so so if you take that list of features that I talked about before, that defines the direction that we're headed with features for MX. And I said I'd talk a bit about GMS apps. So Google Mobile Services, I don't know if many people are familiar with that. So normally when you buy an Android device, you buy an Android phone or a consumer Android tablet, it comes with Google Play on it and Google Maps, and if it has GPS. Gmail, Google's voice recognition app, things like that. Those are not open source. those are part of a set of applications that Google calls Google Mobile Services. They are licensed separately from the open source version of Android. Those applications, for many of our customers, those applications are a bad thing. They don't want users to be able to download, they don't want their clerks to be able to download Angry Birds and play Angry Birds instead of doing their job or whatever. They want them to use the device for the enterprise use for which it was intended. So they don't want those applications on the device. Google, for its own commercial reasons, requires OEMs that in order to license those applications, if you're going to use them on any of your Android devices, you have to sign a contract that says you will use it on all of your Android devices, okay? So it's an all or nothing thing. You have to either ship it on every device every Android device that you ship, or you can't ship them at all. So given that, we've made the choice not to ship so that we can serve those customers that don't want those applications on their device. But there are alternatives where customers need the functionality that's in those applications, but may or may not want the actual Google original version. The other issue is, of course, that many of those applications are tied to a Google ID. So when you buy an Android consumer device and you activate it with Google, you do that with a Gmail address, right, with your Google ID. And those things are tied. Then when you buy an application from Google Play, it gets charged to the credit card that's associated with that Gmail ID, those kinds of things. Many customers don't want that. They don't want the kind of connection of a device to a Google ID for various reasons. For one, they don't want, things, sorry?
But Google Maps.
Google Maps is not, that's true. But it's part of the GMS apps. It's all or nothing, so you don't get to choose.
So mobile-based navigation and stuff like that, won't be able to use that?
Well, so there are alternatives, okay, to Google Maps. You won't be able to use Google Maps, but you can use the alternatives. And there are many of them, actually. And some of them, actually, in certain geographies, OpenStreetMaps is said to be more accurate than Google Maps. So in spite of the huge amounts of money that Google spends, creating that map database and delivering those map tiles, OpenStreetMaps is an open process by which people contribute map information. And particularly in Europe, it's said to be more accurate than the Google databases. So there are alternatives, and we are working with ISVs, a number of ISVs, some of whom are listed here, to make those alternatives available on ET1 to be tested and proven on ET1 to be sure that they work and that they are available for ISV use. There are a couple of gotchas to be aware of that might not be so obvious. There are features buried in those Google mobile services, things like C2DN, the cloud-to-device messaging, Google's push notification service. That's actually buried as part of Google Play. So since we don't have Google Play, we don't have C2DM, there are alternative push notification services that are available. Google licensing is also a part of Google Play and obviously tied to that Google ID again. Again, for an application that requires Google licensing, that's not going to work on an ET1 because it's not going to have Google Play to go to verify the license. Okay. Oh, there's future directions. So I talked about LDAP and private data store, application control and lockdown. So the ability to lock down into kiosk mode, that'll be in a soon coming release from MX. Tracking the Android releases, additional encryption libraries for secure storage, because we've been asked for some of that, and key third-party applications. Some of those are GMS replacement applications. Some of them are just features that where things need to be, the things aren't there with standard Android that enterprise users would like to see on the device. Okay. Okay. We have 10 minutes left, great. So I'll quickly walk through these example applications that demonstrate how easy it is to incorporate barcodes into an application, for example. And the application, the demo that I chose was a price check application, because that's a common thing. Everybody knows what that is. You scan a barcode, you find out what the price is. And I did a couple of variants, or conceived of a couple of variants. Yes?
The scanning is via the camera or
Yes.
barcode?
In this case, it is. There's also an accessory barcode reader, a laser barcode reader, that can be plugged into the device. But in this case, I'm using the camera. So the sort of vanilla version, the original version, was where you would enter the barcode information by hand, and obviously enter the price by hand as well, and just use that as sort of the base version of such an application. And it would accept anything as a price code. You know, it wouldn't check to know that it's a universal price code. It's just a string of digits. And look up the price, and if it can't find it, give you an error message. And so an enhanced version of that would be to actually use the camera as a barcode scanner on the device, and use that to enter the universal price code. And in this case, I was saying we would accept any barcode that it read as a UPC. We wouldn't look at the type of barcode. We would only, take a string that came out, a data string that came out of any kind of a barcode, whether it was UPC or QR or anything else. And then a third kind of variant of the application, I should say the second version of the application, would be using a feature that we built into the ET1, key event injection. So the barcode scanner looks like it's typing in the barcode information to your application. And it does that by injecting key events that look like somebody's pressing on the keys. Okay. The third version of the application uses the intent that I talked about earlier, that we have an intent defined that the barcode reader can issue. And in addition to giving you the barcode data string, it gives you the type of barcode. So we could use that to say that we'll only accept UPC barcodes. Pretty simple design, a main activity with 3 buttons. The buttons kick off either an activity to add an item, an activity to scan an item, or it says clear the prices. So moving to the code. In Eclipse then, I have loaded 2 versions of the application, and you'll see why it's 2 in a minute. Pretty straightforward. I won't belabor the XML layouts. They match the screens that I showed on the design slide. So in the interest of time, just take a look at the code itself. This is price check activity, so it's the main activity that first gets called up with the 3 buttons on it for whatever you want to do. And I cheated, okay? Instead of using a database, a SQL database or SQLite, or using a remote database, which you'd normally use for price code information, I'm storing the price code information as shared preferences. So I don't know, if you've written Android programs, you're probably familiar with that. It's just name value pairs that Android allows you to store and persist across invocations of your application. So it's an easy way to store data, and particularly I'll use the UPC as the name and the value as the price. So I set up for the shared preferences that I want to use, initialize that in my onCreate activity. Then in the layout XML, I've identified these on button click methods, and the add button click just starts the add activity, the scan button click just starts the scan activity, and the clear button activity first makes sure that the user really wants to clear the prices, and then if they do, they call a clear price method that just clears the prices and does a commit, which is what you have to do with shared preferences for it to persist. Okay, pretty straightforward. In the interest of time, well, no, let's look at ad activity. We'll look at ad activity next. So here, so now I want to add an item to this list of UPCs and prices. So again, pretty straightforward. I'm initializing the shared preferences in the same way so that I can get access to them. Finding the views that I'm going to use in the layout in order to get the information. And when the user clicks on the add button after they've entered a UPC and a price, then I'm going to store those in the shared preference, commit the preferences, and tell the user that I did it and reset things so that I can take the next one. Again, pretty straightforward. Finally, scan activity. Same kind of setup. Now I'm using a text view for the price because it's not something that the user is going to enter, it's something the user is going to read. Again, set it up, find the views that I'm going to use, and when the user clicks the find button, get the items price button, I ask for I ask the shared preferences to find the UPC that's been named, and I say, if you can't find it, give me back a -1, because I know -1 is never going to be the price, and that way I'll know that it wasn't found. So if you can't find it, tell the user that. If you do find it, put the price in the text view. So again, all very straightforward. And I'm not going to demo that to you. Believe me that you just type in the UPCs and type in the price if you're adding an item, and it gives you the expected result. What I do want to show you is what do I have to change in order to use key event injection? And the answer is nothing. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to change a single line of code in order to use the barcode scanner instead of typing it in from the virtual keyboard. That's because of that key in event injection capability where it looks like I'm typing it in to the application, which is really cool. And the way I set that up is to go to DataWedge, which is the interface between the barcode scanner and my application. And I say, yes, I want to enable barcode input so that it will use the camera to look for barcodes. And I want to enable keystroke input so that it will do this key event injection. If I wished, I could do things like prefix a string to the data every time that it sends the data in, add a suffix, send the data as hex instead of as ASCII, add a tab key, add enter, those kinds of things. But I don't need to do any of that stuff, so I'm not going to. What I will do is go back to price check orig, which was, again, that code that I just showed you. Say that I want to add an item. Say I have a sheet here of UPCs that I stole from various junk food that it gave me the excuse to buy over the last couple of days. And if I scan, it finds the UPC, decodes it. I can enter a price for that, say $1.99. Add it to the list that I have in shared preferences.
Does the version that doesn't do the key injection appear the same way when you are scanning the barcode, pop up the window on top like that? Is that
Yes, in terms of the camera window.
yeah, just the appearance?
Yeah.
Have it
Yeah.
done in the barcode?
We'll do it. We'll do it because that's the other version of the program that I have here. Yeah.
Is there a difference if I use the scanner versus the camera? Do I need to change settings in the DataWedge, or is it the same?
It's the same. So DataWedge is the interface that hides the details of the barcode scanning from the application, right? So if I had the real scanner accessory clipped onto this ET1, it would use that, and from the application's point of view, it would be transparent. Okay. Find an item's price. Again, I'll scan the same barcode, and hopefully it'll find the price, right? Get the price, $1.99. Cool. So that all works. Now let's take a quick look, because I'm out of time, at the intent version, which isn't a whole lot different. Come on. Let me get rid of these so I don't confuse myself. So looking at the source here, what I did, well, first of all, I changed the manifest to add an intent filter for the intent that's going to be coming from the data wedge module, right? And you can create whatever action name and category name you want to for that intent. I created one called con.msi action scan and con.msi category barcode, but you can make it anything you want it to be. And I'll show you where you do that. Then I changed scan activity. So that it does all the same kind of stuff it did before to set up the shared preferences, and the same kind of stuff for on scan on when they click the scan button. But there's a new override, really. I'm overriding the Android on new intent method so that when an intent comes in, I can strip the data out of it and strip the barcode type out of it. And then I compare that with label type UPCA, which is what it will give me when it scans a UPCA type barcode to see if it's that kind of barcode, and then accept it or not. Okay? So let's try that one. Go back to Android screen capture. So I need to reconfigure data wedge, right? So that it's sending an intent instead of doing the key event injection. So I'll disable key event injection.
Are you able to do any of this programmatically if you want certain screens, certain activities, you want it to be able to use the barcode and some not?
Yeah, currently not. You're not it's a one-way connection with data wedge. That's something I've asked for the future, though, because something that we run into. So you can see that this is where I defined what the intent action would be and the intent category. So you can define that to be anything you want it to be. You can define how the intent is delivered, and I've chosen start activity so that it will actually start the scan activity. I didn't show you well, I did show you the manifest, but I didn't point out the scan activity is identified as single top, so that if scan activity is already running, it won't run a new scan activity. It will just bring it to the foreground. But you can select start activity, start a service, or just broadcast the intent to pick it up any way you wish. And we should be ready to go. Let's see if I do this. I say, I think I've already added all these. Let's see if they're, we'll test that theory. Huh? So the price is 303. Now let me, for example, scan. I have a QR code on here as well as all these barcodes. So let me scan that, and it says barcode is not. So it, by using the intent, you have access to the barcode type information that you would not normally get using the key event injection. Okay. So that's it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.